Well, there's no denying it. The world's gone completely stupid. It's pretty official. Everywhere you look in the news, more evidence. And in case you were wondering how do we get here, if you're hoping that you'll just wake up and it'll go back to normal, imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that you've been transported into America of 1887. No smartphone, no television, no internet, no air conditioning, antibiotics, jet aircraft, credit card, no central bank. You just step outside and hear something almost never hear anymore, and that is silence. Then a horse, a wagon, a hammer striking iron. Somewhere down the street, a man is sweeping the sidewalk in front of his store. A woman is hanging laundry, children are walking to school, and everybody seems to know everybody. And you ask a fellow on the corner, what time is it? He just looks up at the sun and tells you, and he's probably right. And you ask him how far the next town is. He doesn't pull out a phone. He just knows. You ask him something, what it costs, and he just tells you. And somehow, without a calculator, without Excel, without an app, he can do the math in his head. And this is before there was taxes, so he didn't have to figure that in. He just knows the math because he has to. And perhaps that's the first uncomfortable thought. Maybe convenience has made us less capable. The man born in the 1880s lived in a world that demanded competence. If you could remember something, you did not Google it. If you couldn't repair something, you learned. If you didn't have the cash for it, you didn't need it. And if you wanted dinner, somebody had to grow it, raise it, hunt it, preserve it, or buy it with money somebody had actually earned and saved. Work wasn't a lifestyle accessory. Work was survival and dignity. A man's word mattered because his reputation was his credit score. A handshake could be a contract. Your neighbors weren't followers. They were neighbors. The family down the road knew when your mother was sick. They knew when your barn burned. They brought food when somebody died. And if you needed help, you didn't post about it. You knocked on a door. And that America had problems, plenty of them. Child mortality was brutal. Medical science was primitive. Poverty was real. Disease was everywhere. We shouldn't romanticize suffering. But we shouldn't romanticize our present either, because somewhere between those two Americas, we traded some of the things that were difficult to measure, and perhaps those were the things that mattered the most. Consider money. Before the Federal Reserve was created in 1913, America operated without the modern central bank architecture we now just take for granted. Under the classical gold standard, dollars were linked to gold. Money was not simply an entry in a computer. It represented something scarce, something that could not be printed because Washington needed another $1 trillion before breakfast. You could argue about the gold standard, and economists certainly do, but there was a powerful discipline embedded in it. You could not manufacture purchasing power out of thin air, and that mattered. Because if your grandparents saved $100, they expected that $100 to still mean something. Today, we have extraordinary financial machinery. We also have extraordinary financial complexity. We have derivatives, quantitative easing, debt markets, central bank balance sheets, algorithmic trading, zero-day options, trillions of dollars moving around the world before most people finish their coffee. And yet, ask an ordinary American what his money is worth 10 years from now, and silence. Because we have created a financial system sophisticated enough to calculate the value of everything while making the value of money itself increasingly difficult to understand. Then there is language. Listen to an educated letter written in the 19th century. The vocabulary is often startling, not because everybody was a genius, but because people read. They wrote, they memorized, they practiced rhetoric. They learned arithmetic. They had fewer distractions. They could carry an honest-to-goodness conversation, and it was good. A child couldn't spend 6 hours watching strangers dance on a screen. There was no infinite doom scrolling, no algorithm competing for the next 3 seconds of his or her attention, and perhaps that's another uncomfortable possibility. Maybe attention was once considered a virtue, instead of a commodity. The human brain has not evolved substantially in the last century, but the environment surrounding it has changed almost beyond recognition. We carry supercomputers in our pockets and sometimes use them to argue with strangers about whether a celebrity is annoying. We can communicate with somebody on the other side of the planet instantly and don't know the name of the person living next door. We have more information than any civilization in human history and less agreement about what is true. We have more calories and fewer healthy bodies, more entertainment, less contentment, more communication, more loneliness, more financial products, less financial security, more convenience, less competence, more years, but often more years spent managing chronic disease. Modern medicine is the great exception, and thank God for it. The person born in 1887 might have died at an age we would consider young by today's standards. Modern medicine has transformed that. Antibiotics, vaccines, surgery, cancer treatment, cardiology, emergency medicine. The list is extraordinary, but we should celebrate it. But here is where there is a strange paradox. Medicine has become extraordinarily good at keeping us alive. Our society has become extraordinarily good at making many people sick. That isn't a condemnation of doctors, but it is a business model. Treat the consequence, manage the symptom, prescribe the medication, schedule the follow-up, bill the insurer, keep the person long enough alive to juice the last dollar out of them, rinse and repeat. There is little economic incentive to sell a customer a product that prevents the customer from being a customer. And so we built an enormous economy around managing the consequences of modern life. Sedentary jobs, processed food, stress, poor sleep, social isolation, screen addiction, chronic metabolic diseases. And then we congratulate ourselves because the machine can keep the machine running longer. Longer life is wonderful, but perhaps the goal shouldn't be merely to add years to the life. Perhaps the goal should be to add life to the years. And then there is the strangest part of our cultural journey. A civilization once obsessed with building railroads, factories, bridges, farms, laboratories, and cities now spends enormous amounts of energy arguing over the most basic categories of human identity. What is a man? What is a woman? What is truth? What is real? Some of these questions deserve serious discussion. People deserve dignity. People deserve freedom. People deserve to live without cruelty. But perhaps there is something revealing about a civilization that can place a rover on Mars and then spend years fighting over definitions that previous generations would have regarded as obvious, as givens. Perhaps that is what happens when a society becomes wealthy enough to lose its sense of urgency. When survival becomes easy, when we manufacture battles. When work becomes optional, we debate work. When food becomes abundant, we debate food. When information becomes infinite, we debate reality. And when life becomes comfortable, we sometimes forget the comfort, what it was purchased with. So what do? Do we tear it all down? No. The answer is not to return to 1887. The answer is to recover what was good about 1887 while keeping what is miraculous about 2026 and beyond. Keep the antibiotics, the MRIs, the electricity, the internet, the airplanes, the surgical robots even, but bring back the handshake, bring back the neighborhood, bring back the repairman, bring back the family dinner, teach children arithmetic without a calculator before they learn how to use one, teach them to memorize long memory verses while they still can, teach them history, teach them how money works, teach them how to build something, teach them that attention is valuable, teach them that a man or woman's word should mean something, teach them that character matters more than credentials. And perhaps most importantly, teach them that being useful is honorable. We don't need to abandon technology. We just need to stop worshiping it. We don't need to abolish modern finance. We just need to understand it and use it to our advantage. We don't need to reject modern medicine. We need to stop confusing treatment with health. And we don't need to become our great-grandparents. We simply need to remember what they understood, that civilization isn't built by consumers. It's built by people who produce, who save, who teach, who repair, who sacrifice, who marry, who raise children, who stay married, who plant trees they will never sit beneath, who build businesses they may never see finished, who shovel the sidewalk even when nobody is watching. And that is how civilization is supposed to work. One ordinary person doing one ordinary thing well. Perhaps this world hasn't gone stupid. Perhaps we've simply become distracted. And distracted people can remember. So tonight, before you scroll one more hour, just put the phone down. Call somebody. Know your neighbor. Read a book. Learn something difficult. Save something. Build something. Fix something. And tomorrow morning, go to work. Because it's not because the world deserves your labor, but because you deserve the dignity that comes from doing something worthwhile. The man born in 1887 didn't have our technology or our medicine or even our wealth, but he had something we should be careful not to lose. He understood that life was short, that money was scarce, that your reputation followed you, and that your neighbors mattered, that your family needed you, and that when the sun came up, there was work to be done. Maybe the way forward is not backwards. Maybe progress isn't going back to the past. Maybe progress is taking the best of the past and carrying it into the future. Because somewhere beneath the algorithms, the debt, the noise, the politics, the screens, and the endless arguments, the human being hasn't changed. He still wants a home, a family, a purpose, a friend he or she can trust, a day's work he or she can be proud of, a community that knows his or her name. And at the end of the day, we all still want to sit on the porch, watch the sun go down, and feel just for a moment that the world makes sense. And maybe that's not nostalgia. Maybe that's wisdom. And maybe, just maybe, the world isn't waiting for another invention. Maybe it's waiting for us to remember what we already knew. And now you know the rest of the story for how to make humans honorable again. Build that stack. iBankerU. Good day.